To federal politics now. Just days after he was voted leader of the federal Conservative Party, Pierre Poilievre has named his leadership team for when the House of Commons reconvenes tomorrow. CTV News political commentator Tom Mulcair joins us live to discuss. Thanks so much for joining us, Tom. It's great to see you. It's been a while.
Great to be with you, Lena.
I know you've written about sitting across from Pierre Poilievre in the House of Commons. He is now leader of the Conservative Party of Canada. I guess I'll start by getting your thoughts.
Well, I think that people like me who spend their time commenting and analyzing politics are going to be well served, because Pierre Poilievre is going to give us a lot to talk about. He's only been there for half a week, and already he's started a fight with a very senior and highly respected member of the press gallery, because he wouldn't answer whether or not they were going to get questions, and that journalist went a bit too far and has apologized. But, of course, Poilievre used that as an excuse to go out and fundraise on it, saying that all journalists are biased, that they have to go directly to the people, so please give us more money. The same Pierre Poilievre, we found out today, is organizing his party to send letters to people in the riding of outgoing Conservative MP Alain Rayes, who has chosen to sit as an independent. His politics as a progressive Conservative are simply too different from those of Mr. Poilievre. And they're actually organizing people. They're harassing him. They're giving his phone numbers at the offices and saying, phone and tell him to resign. So this is unbelievable behavior from a party leader who's also the leader of the opposition. But I guess we should all get used to it, because this is going to be life in politics with Pierre Poilievre.
Okay, so you say it's unbelievable behavior, but the reality is he's very popular within the Conservative caucus. So what do you think worked about his rhetoric? What was effective in his campaign?
People in the Conservative caucus, as you correctly point out, are the ones who are most concerned. They didn't want to go through what they went through with Andrew Scheer or Aaron O'Toole. O'Toole, to try to make a pitch to a wider Canadian audience, for example, understood that there had to be certain restrictions on firearms. They know that Pierre Poilievre is never going to do that. He's never going to talk about it. O'Toole tried to bring a motion before the Conservative Party to recognize the simple scientific fact of greenhouse gas emissions warming the planet, and they rejected that. And so, Mr. O'Toole was pointed at by his caucus saying, you're selling us out, you're bringing in a carbon tax. He was only in opposition. He couldn't bring anything in, but he recognized the need to do something about climate change. So Mr. Poilievre's never going to disappoint on that stuff, but at the same time, he's got a couple of LGBTQ members of his leadership team. He has expressed the fact that he is very open. He's pro-choice with regard to women's reproductive rights. So these are things that are normally not accepted by somebody who is so affectionately held in esteem by what they call the more right-wing conservatives, the social conservatives. Those are people who are often close to church groups, who are very anti-abortion. So he's managed to piece together an incredible coalition. He won. Look, he cleared the table across Canada. Charest came in second at 16%. Yeah. So this guy's obviously talking the type of game that conservatives were dying to hear. The real question, Lena, is the average Canadian going to be attracted by this? And all he's been able to do so far is to throw hardballs at the head of anybody that he doesn't like. And this is from the leader. So what's the message going to be for the rest of caucus? It's going to be fun to watch them in the House, but I'm not sure that the average Canadian is going to follow.
Yeah, and he has to appeal to the majority of Canadians now. That's going to be a big challenge for him. Listen, you've led a national party before. When a political leader flirts with the far right and supports a freedom convoy that occupies the nation's capital, what does that do to Canadian politics? Is that dangerous? How dangerous is it?
Well, ideologically driven parties have more of a hard time. And obviously, Pierre Poilievre understood that about the Conservatives, and he appealed to them. But it is rather galling to see somebody who would encourage people who said they would not leave downtown Ottawa until the government resigned and they had replaced it. This just in, Canada's still a democracy. And yet Pierre Poilievre was out there supporting them. He backed away when it was, becoming too obvious and it was going to hurt him. But he had managed to communicate to his base that he was with them. And when he talks about freedom and going against the science on masks and mandates for vaccinations, that sort of thing, he's obviously talking to a fringe. Now, their answer is going to be it's quite a big fringe because he won most of those ridings. But again, it's a part of Canada, and it doesn't represent the core values of most of Canada. And Poilievre, I believe, is deluding himself if he thinks that he can take that discourse and spread it out across the country.
Some believe that Pierre Poilievre may begin to change his message to try to appeal to most Canadians. Do you think the average person will remember that moment? Will they punish him at the polls for it, Tom?
No, it's going to be a picture with many different facets to it that's going to be put together over the coming years. I'd say we're a good 2 years out from the next election. Trudeau gets to call it whenever he wants. He doesn't have to respect his deal with Singh. Singh, of course, is hoping they'll stay there in that deal as long as possible because fundraising, for example, for the NDP is a bit of a challenge right now. And the membership base is still nervous about the deal with the Liberals, saying that maybe they had lost some of their own identity, but they're safe right now. Everybody in the Liberal Party and in the NDP gets to say, we're going to see how this thing shakes out for the next couple of years. Trudeau is no slouch. He's an experienced politician. Like Poilievre, he's a good organizer. Lena, one of the things that we saw about Pierre Poilievre is he was able to use the most modern tools, tap into the anger within a certain fringe of the Conservative Party, and win massively across the country. Jean Charest, with more classic themes and a much more measured approach, got clobbered. So the message was, we want angry. We want a fire breather. That's fine. That's the game that he had to play to win the leadership. But if he thinks that continuing on with that as the leader of the party, as the leader of the official opposition, who wants to show that his party is a government in waiting, he's going to have to change his tone. But it's going to be very difficult because he doesn't want to, and the people around him realize he has to.
Right.
And that's going to be the fight for the soul of the party.
Yeah, that'll be fascinating to watch. I heard you say that he appeals to a certain fringe. When you ask Conservative Party insiders if Pierre Poilievre is an extremist or if he's too extreme, they say not at all. So do you think he's exploited that group for political gains?
Well, he's very close to them, and he of course he exploited them for political gains because he told them exactly what they wanted to hear. But I sincerely believe that it's exactly what he does believe himself.
Oh, you believe that? Okay.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he wasn't out with those truckers just making, smiley face at them, hoping that, that they would remember him fondly. He wanted the average Conservative voter to remember what he had done and see that as part of his branding. And that's what he took across the country. He would hold meetings and he would talk about getting rid of the CBC. Now, it's interesting. Will that carry forward into the official policy and platform of the Conservative Party in the next campaign? Will they do that? What is going to be in there? It's very nice to talk about freedom, but the only time I ever got to see Pierre Poilievre deal with a core issue, a big issue, which was electoral reform. He refused to talk with the other parties, even though it was going to affect all of them. That was a complete breach of protocol and precedent in the Parliament of Canada. And he was making it far more difficult for people at the lower end of the socioeconomic spectrum to vote. That's called vote suppression. And he was organizing and concocting something to do that. It became so troublesome for Stephen Harper, who was very pig-headed himself. Harper had to back away from key parts of it that Poilievre was putting forward. So Poilievre talks a good game with regard to freedom, but what's the most important freedom we have, if not the freedom to vote and choose our own government? So there's a big difference between what Pierre Poilievre says about freedom and what he does when he has power. And that's something that people will be paying attention to also, Lena.
Okay, it's been so interesting to talk to you. CTV News political commentator Tom Mulcair. Hope to speak to you soon, sir. Thanks so much for this.
All the best, Nina. Take good care.
You too.